Olivia had always seen him as her mother's husband, until one fateful night changed everything. A simple glance turned into a stolen touch. A casual conversation became a whispered secret. The line between family and forbidden desire blurred into something unspeakable. She knew it was wrong. She knew she should stop. But the way he looked at her, the way his voice wrapped around her name, it made her forget every boundary, every moral, every vow she had ever made. One night, one betrayal, and a secret that, if revealed, would destroy everything. Olivia Carter had always lived a life that appeared perfect on the outside. At 34, she was married to David, a strong, reliable man who provided everything she could ever ask for. Their suburban home in Charlotte, North Carolina, was the epitome of comfort, and their 10-year marriage had been, by all accounts, steady, routine, predictable, safe. But safety had never been the thing that made her heart race. Her mother, Cynthia, had remarried 8 years ago after Olivia's biological father passed away. The man she married was Leonard Hayes, a towering, confident, and charismatic man in his late 50s. He was the type of man who commanded attention without effort. His presence alone could make a room silent. Unlike David, who was steady and gentle, Leonard had an edge, an untamed, dominant energy that Olivia had spent years trying to ignore. For years, she had called him her stepfather. She had treated him like family. But lately, something had shifted. It started subtly, a lingering glance, an extra second of eye contact that felt just a bit too intense. And then, one evening, everything changed. It was a warm summer night when Olivia and David were invited to Cynthia and Leonard's lake house for the weekend. They had been there countless times before, but something about this weekend felt different. The air was thicker, charged with an energy Olivia didn't want to acknowledge. She walked into the kitchen to find Leonard alone, pouring himself a glass of bourbon. His sleeves were rolled up, exposing his strong forearms, the veins along his hands standing out as he gripped the glass. She swallowed hard. "You drink bourbon now?" she asked, her voice light, masking the unease in her chest. Leonard turned, his eyes, those sharp, knowing eyes, fixing on her. "It's an acquired taste," he murmured, taking a slow sip. Like many things in life. The way he said it sent a chill down her spine. It wasn't the words themselves. It was the way his voice dipped, the way his gaze locked onto hers as if he were searching for something buried deep inside her. She should have left. She should have walked out of that kitchen and gone back to her husband. But she didn't. Instead, she found herself standing there, trapped in the weight of his stare. "How's David?" Leonard asked, his voice smooth but laced with something else. Something dangerous. She exhaled slowly. "He's fine. Work has been keeping him busy." Leonard took another sip of his drink, his lips curling slightly. "And you? What's keeping you busy, Olivia?" The way he said her name, like he was tasting it, sent a flicker of heat through her body. She hated that she felt it. She hated that she wanted more. The moment stretched between them, silent but loaded with tension. Then, as if sensing her internal conflict, Leonard smirked, set his glass down, and walked past her, his hand grazing her lower back as he did. It was barely a touch. A second, less than that. But it was enough. Enough to set fire to something inside her she had no business feeling. Enough to make her wonder, for the first time in her life, what it would be like to break every rule she had ever lived by. Olivia barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt the ghost of Leonard's touch on her back, the heat of his gaze pressing against her skin. She lay in bed beside David, listening to the rhythmic sound of his breathing, trying to convince herself that she was overthinking. But the truth gnawed at her, relentless. Morning came too soon, sunlight streaming through the windows of the lake house. Olivia woke up groggy, her mind still tangled in the events of the night before. She got dressed in denim shorts and a fitted tank top, then walked downstairs to find everyone already gathered on the back patio. Leonard was there, leaning against the wooden railing, his eyes scanning the lake. He was dressed casually, gray t-shirt, khaki shorts, but something about him still carried that untamed energy, that quiet dominance that unsettled her. Their eyes met. It lasted only a second, but Olivia felt it deep in her chest. That same charge. That same tension. "Morning, sweetheart," Cynthia called out from the table where she was setting plates. "Coffee's fresh if you want some." "Thanks, Mom," Olivia replied, forcing a smile. She moved to the coffee station, pouring herself a cup, but she could feel him watching her. Even as she tried to ignore it, she knew Leonard was aware of the effect he had on her. Breakfast passed in a blur of casual conversation. Cynthia and David discussed work, the lake, their next vacation. Olivia tried to focus, but her mind was elsewhere. And then, when no one was paying attention, she felt it. A foot, his foot, grazing against hers beneath the table. Her entire body tensed. She kept her eyes down, her hands wrapped around her coffee cup, but her pulse pounded against her ribs. It was innocent enough to be dismissed, to be ignored. But it wasn't innocent, and she knew that he knew it. Minutes later, Leonard leaned back in his chair, stretching his arms above his head. "I think I'll take the boat out," he said casually. Then, as if it were an afterthought, he turned to Olivia. "Care to join me?" Her throat went dry. Cynthia barely looked up. "That sounds nice, but I promised David I'd help him fix the dock." Leonard didn't miss a beat. "I was asking Olivia." Silence. David glanced at Olivia, oblivious to the underlying tension. "Go ahead, babe. You love the water." She should have said no. She should have found an excuse. But she didn't. Instead, she nodded, ignoring the warning bells screaming in her head. "Sure," she said softly. Leonard smirked. And just like that, the line between right and wrong blurred a little more. The boat rocked gently as Leonard guided it away from the dock. The hum of the engine and the rhythmic splash of water against the hull filled the thick silence between them. Olivia sat across from him, her sunglasses shielding her eyes, but it did nothing to hide the tension crackling in the air. She should have never gotten on this boat. Leonard steered effortlessly, his hands firm on the wheel, his gaze occasionally flicking toward her. "You're quiet," he said after a while. Olivia took a slow breath. "Just enjoying the view." He smirked. "Are you?" There was something about the way he said it, like he knew she wasn't talking about the lake. She shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know why I agreed to this." Leonard let out a low chuckle. "Because you wanted to." Her stomach tightened. "That's not true." He cut the engine. The sudden silence was deafening. The boat drifted, the water stretching endlessly around them. Leonard turned fully toward her now, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp, focused. "You don't have to lie to me, Olivia." Her breath hitched. He leaned in slightly, elbows resting on his knees. "I see the way you look at me." Her heart pounded. "You're my mother's husband," she said, the words feeling thin, weak. "And you're David's wife," he countered smoothly. Silence. He reached for the small cooler beside him, pulled out a bottle of whiskey, and took a slow sip straight from it. Then, without a word, he handed it to her. She hesitated. Then, against all better judgment, she took it. The burn of the alcohol hit her throat, but it was nothing compared to the fire already spreading through her body. Leonard watched her intently, his expression unreadable. "Tell me to turn the boat around." Her grip tightened around the bottle. "Tell him, Olivia. Tell him to stop this before it goes too far." But she didn't say anything. Instead, she took another drink. Leonard's eyes darkened. "That's what I thought." He stood, moving toward her with slow, deliberate steps. The boat rocked gently beneath them, the world around them empty, silent. She knew this was the moment to end it, to walk away. But when he reached out and traced a single finger along her jaw, she didn't move. She didn't pull away. And then, just like that, the last thread of restraint snapped. Leonard's fingers lingered against Olivia's jaw, his touch feather-light but charged with something dark, something dangerous. Her breath caught in her throat. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to move, to pull away, but she didn't. Instead, she let it happen. His thumb brushed against her lower lip, slow and deliberate, his gaze locked onto hers. "You're shaking," he murmured. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered. "But you are." The boat rocked gently, the water stretching endlessly around them, isolating them from reality. There was no David, no Cynthia, just the two of them, teetering on the edge of something irreversible. Leonard leaned in, his lips a breath away from hers. "Tell me to stop." Her pulse pounded in her ears. "Tell him." Say the words. But they never came. Instead, her lips parted, and in that moment, the last remnants of logic shattered. Leonard closed the space between them, his mouth capturing hers in a slow, claiming kiss. The world blurred. His hand slid into her hair, pulling her closer, deepening the kiss. Olivia gasped against his lips, the sensation overwhelming, intoxicating. Every touch, every brush of his fingers against her skin sent a pulse of heat straight to her core. This was wrong. So wrong. And yet, she couldn't stop. Her hands gripped his shirt, pulling him closer, her body betraying every rational thought. Leonard groaned against her mouth, his hands gripping her waist, fingers digging into her skin. "Jesus, Olivia," he muttered, his breath ragged. A sharp ring cut through the air. Her phone. Reality crashed back like a tidal wave. She jerked away, breathless, heart hammering. Scrambling for her phone, she glanced at the screen. David. Guilt punched her in the chest. She hesitated before answering. Hey, she said, voice unsteady. Hey, babe. Just checking in. You having fun? Her eyes darted to Leonard, who was watching her with a dark, knowing smirk. Yeah, she breathed. I'm fine. The ride back to the dock was silent. Olivia sat stiffly, arms crossed, her mind a chaotic mess. What the hell had she just done? David had called at the exact moment she had crossed the line. A warning? A sign? But the worst part? She didn't regret it. As soon as Leonard cut the engine, she practically leaped off the boat, muttering an excuse about needing a shower. She rushed inside, locking the bathroom door behind her. Stripping off her clothes, she stepped under the spray, letting the water cascade over her skin. But no matter how hard she scrubbed, she couldn't wash away the feel of Leonard's hands. Her fingers trembled as she braced herself against the tile. This was madness. She had to stop. A knock at the door made her jump. Olivia. Her breath hitched. Leonard. I'm in the shower, she called, forcing steadiness into her voice. A pause. Then, a quiet chuckle. I know. Her stomach twisted. Go away. He didn't respond. But she knew he was still there. Knew he was testing her. And the worst part? She wanted him to. Dinner that night was unbearable. Olivia sat between David and Cynthia, barely touching her food. Across the table, Leonard was the picture of ease, casually sipping his wine, his expression unreadable. But she felt it. The weight of what they had done. The way his gaze flicked to her lips. A silent reminder of what they had shared on that boat. Cynthia reached for Leonard's hand, squeezing it affectionately. I'm so lucky to have you, she murmured. Olivia's stomach churned. She needed to get out of there. I think I'll go for a walk, she blurted, pushing back her chair. David frowned. You okay? Yeah, just need some air. Without waiting for a response, she slipped outside, inhaling deeply as the cool night air hit her skin. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to suppress the war raging inside her. A twig snapped behind her. She didn't have to turn around to know who it was. Running away? Leonard's voice was low, teasing. She spun to face him. What do you want from me? He took a slow step forward. I think you already know. Her breath came in shallow pants. This has to stop. Leonard smiled. Is that what you really want? She opened her mouth, ready to say yes, to end this. But then he closed the distance between them, his fingers brushing over her arm, and every ounce of resistance crumbled. She was already too far gone. The night air was thick, heavy with tension. Olivia could barely breathe as Leonard's fingers traced up her arm, igniting a fire beneath her skin. This is wrong, she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. Leonard's lips curled into a smirk. Then walk away. She didn't. Instead, she let him push her back against the tree, his hands pinning her wrists as his body pressed against hers. The rough bark bit into her skin, but she barely felt it. All she could feel was him, his heat, his breath against her lips, the undeniable force pulling her toward him. Then his mouth was on hers, and every ounce of restraint shattered. His kiss was nothing like David's. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was raw, possessive, like he had been waiting for this moment as long as she had. Olivia whimpered as his grip tightened, her body arching into his. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she knew this was the point of no return. There would be no coming back from this. But she didn't care. She wanted this, needed this. Her fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, deepening the kiss. He groaned against her mouth, his hands sliding down to her hips, pressing her harder against him. Then, a noise, a rustling in the bushes. They froze. Olivia's heart slammed against her ribs. Had someone seen them? Leonard released her, stepping back, his eyes dark with a mixture of frustration and amusement. Looks like we're not alone, he murmured. Her breath came in shaky gasps. We can't do this here. His smirk returned. Then we'll find somewhere else. And just like that, he turned and walked away, leaving Olivia trembling against the tree, her body still burning from his touch. Olivia barely slept that night. She lay beside David, staring at the ceiling, every nerve in her body still electrified. What had she done? What was she doing? When morning came, she forced herself to act normal. She smiled at David, kissed him, made small talk with Cynthia. But every time she looked at Leonard, she saw the glint in his eyes, the silent promise lingering between them. And it terrified her how much she wanted more. At breakfast, David wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. You okay? You seem distracted. Olivia forced a smile. Just tired. Leonard's smirk deepened over his coffee cup. Bastard. He knew exactly what he was doing. Maybe you should rest today, David suggested. I'll be working on the dock with your mom, so you'll have some time to yourself. Leonard set his cup down. I can keep her company. Olivia's stomach dropped. Cynthia smiled. That's a great idea. Maybe take the boat out again, get some fresh air. Olivia wanted to scream, but she couldn't say no, not without raising suspicion. So she nodded, pretending like the idea didn't send a rush of anticipation straight through her veins. Yeah, she said softly. That sounds nice. They barely made it out of sight before it happened. The moment the house disappeared behind the trees, Leonard grabbed her, his lips crashing against hers with a hunger that stole the breath from her lungs. Olivia moaned into his mouth, her hands clutching at his shirt, desperate, reckless. Jesus, he muttered, pulling back just enough to look at her. You have no idea what you do to me. Her heart pounded. This is insane. His fingers trailed down her spine. Then stop me. She didn't. Instead, she let him push her back onto the cushioned seat, his body covering hers. Their lips met again, hands roaming, grasping, kneading. The boat rocked beneath them, the sun beating down, but Olivia was lost in him, lost in the danger, lost in the high of doing something she should never do. And for the first time in her life, she didn't care. Hours later, Olivia stood in the shower again, her skin still tingling from Leonard's touch. No amount of hot water could wash away the feeling of his hands, his lips, the way he had consumed her on that boat. She had never felt this way before. With David, everything had always been safe, predictable, comfortable. But with Leonard, it was fire. It was danger. It was something she couldn't control, and that terrified her. Yet, as much as she wanted to pretend this was a one-time thing, she knew the truth. This was only the beginning. Olivia spent the rest of the day avoiding Leonard. She needed to clear her head, to remind herself who she was. But it was impossible when he was always there, watching, smirking. That night, as she and David lay in bed, she felt his fingers trail down her arm. I've missed you, he murmured against her neck. Her stomach twisted with guilt. David was a good man. He didn't deserve this. But when he kissed her, all she could think about was Leonard, and that realization nearly destroyed her. The next morning, Olivia woke up before dawn, slipping out of bed and heading outside for fresh air. She needed space. But she wasn't alone. Leonard was already there, leaning against the porch railing, a cigarette between his fingers. You're up early, he murmured. So are you. He smirked. Couldn't sleep. Their eyes met, and in that moment, she knew this wasn't over. Not even close. And when Leonard reached for her, pulling her against him, Olivia didn't resist, because she didn't want to. The early morning air was thick with moisture, the remnants of the night clinging to Olivia's skin like a second layer. She should have been inside, wrapped in David's arms, but instead, she stood on the porch, trapped in Leonard's gaze. A slow curl of smoke drifted from his lips, swirling between them like an unspoken confession. The scent of tobacco mixed with the salty breeze from the water, creating an intoxicating fog that wrapped around Olivia, pulling her deeper into the abyss she swore she wouldn't enter again. And yet, she was already drowning. Leonard exhaled slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. You've been avoiding me. She crossed her arms over her chest, more for protection than warmth. I've been thinking. Thinking, he echoed, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. He took another drag of his cigarette before flicking the ash onto the wooden deck. And what have you decided? Olivia's throat was dry. She knew what she should say, that it was a mistake, that they had to stop before it was too late. But it was already too late. And Leonard knew it. Nothing, she whispered. A dangerous gleam flashed in his eyes. He took a step forward, closing the space between them. The heat from his body was suffocating, his presence overpowering. You're lying, he murmured, his fingers grazing the inside of her wrist. You're thinking about yesterday, about my hands on you, about how good it felt to finally let go. A shudder ran down her spine. God help her, he was right. I can't do this, she choked out. His fingers tightened around her wrist, pulling her closer until their bodies were flush against each other. Then walk away, Olivia. Right now. Go inside, crawl back into bed with your husband, and pretend none of this ever happened. Her pulse pounded. All she had to do was step back. Just one step. But she didn't move. Leonard's grip loosened, his thumb tracing lazy circles against her skin. That's what I thought, he murmured before capturing her lips in a searing kiss. And just like that, she was lost again. They barely made it to the guest house before the floodgates broke. Leonard kicked the door shut behind them, his hands already tugging at Olivia's clothes, his mouth leaving a scorching trail down her neck. She gasped, her fingers threading through his hair, pulling him closer, needing more. This wasn't love. This was something far more dangerous. Tell me to stop, he growled against her skin, his breath hot, his hands relentless. She couldn't, because she didn't want to. His grip tightened around her hips, pressing her against the cool wooden wall. The contrast of heat and cold sent a shiver through her, heightening every sensation. Jesus, Olivia, Leonard groaned, his forehead resting against hers. Do you have any idea what you're doing to me? Her breath came in short, desperate gasps. The same thing you're doing to me. A low curse escaped his lips before he kissed her again, deeper this time, as if he was trying to brand himself into her soul. And maybe he already had. When Olivia returned to the main house later that morning, she felt like she had been stripped raw. Every inch of her tingled, her body still humming from Leonard's touch, yet her heart was weighed down by an unbearable guilt. David was sitting on the porch, sipping his coffee, his face lighting up when he saw her. Hey, babe, you were up early. Her stomach twisted. She forced a smile. Yeah, just needed some air. David reached for her hand, pulling her onto his lap. She stiffened, the warmth of his touch now foreign, unfamiliar. Are you okay? He murmured, pressing a soft kiss to her temple. She wanted to cry. She wanted to scream. Instead, she nodded. I'm fine. But the first crack had already formed, and soon, everything would shatter. The day stretched on like an eternity, each minute dragging heavier than the last. Olivia moved through the house like a ghost, her mind replaying the morning's events in an endless, dizzying loop. Every stolen touch, every whispered breath, the way Leonard had possessed her like she belonged to him. She felt raw, exposed, like the world could see right through her. She tried to act normal. She laughed when David told a joke. She helped Cynthia prepare lunch, pretending not to notice when Leonard walked past the kitchen, his presence pressing against her like an invisible force. But it was all a lie. Her body still ached from him. And God help her, she wanted more. The weight of what she had done clung to Olivia like a second skin, suffocating, inescapable. No matter how many times she tried to shake it off, it was there, lurking in the shadows of her mind. She had crossed a line she could never uncross. And the worst part? She wasn't sure she wanted to. She sat on the edge of the dock, her bare feet dangling above the water, the wooden planks warm beneath her from the sun's relentless heat. The lake stretched out in front of her, calm, still, so opposite of the storm brewing inside her. Footsteps behind her. Slow. Measured. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Leonard. His presence was like gravity, pulling her in even when she knew she should resist. He crouched beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. He smelled like salt and cigarettes, like something dangerous, something forbidden. You've been avoiding me again, he murmured. Olivia exhaled slowly, staring at her reflection in the water. I had to. Leonard let out a low chuckle, but there was no humor in it. And how's that working out for you? She turned to face him, and the moment their eyes met, her breath caught. Because she saw it. The same hunger. The same longing. The same madness that had consumed her since the first moment his hands touched her. Leonard. He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face, his touch both gentle and possessive. Tell me you regret it, he whispered. And I'll walk away. Her lips parted, but no words came. Because she couldn't lie. Not to him. Not to herself. Leonard smirked, as if he had won a game she never even realized they were playing. Then, in one swift motion, he stood, holding out his hand. Come with me. She hesitated, knowing that if she took his hand, there would be no turning back. But she was already too far gone. So she reached out, her fingers slipping into his, sealing her fate. And as he pulled her to her feet, leading her away from the dock, away from the house, away from the life she had built, Olivia knew. She was about to destroy everything. And she wanted to. The world outside was bathed in golden light as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the sprawling lake house estate. The air was thick, humid, charged with an energy Olivia couldn't ignore. Leonard led her away from the dock, his grip firm yet unhurried, as if he already knew she wouldn't resist. And she didn't. They walked in silence, their footsteps muffled by the soft dirt path leading toward the secluded boathouse at the far end of the property. Olivia's heart pounded, every beat a deafening drum in her chest. She knew what was about to happen. And still, she kept moving forward. A distant voice in her mind screamed at her to stop, to think about David, about the life she had spent years building. But all of that felt like a distant dream now. The only thing that mattered was the man walking beside her. They reached the boathouse, its weathered wooden door slightly ajar. Leonard pushed it open without hesitation, guiding Olivia inside. The scent of cedar and gasoline filled the air, mingling with the faint, lingering musk of summer rain. Light streamed in through the dusty windows, illuminating the small, intimate space, old fishing gear hanging from the walls, an overturned canoe resting in the corner, a faded couch pushed against the far end. Leonard let go of her hand and turned to face her, his piercing gaze locking onto hers. "Close the door," he said, his voice low, commanding. Olivia hesitated for only a second before obeying. The click of the latch was deafening in the quiet. And just like that, they were alone. Truly alone. Leonard took a slow step forward, and Olivia instinctively backed up until her spine pressed against the wooden wall. He didn't touch her. Not yet. Instead, he studied her, his dark eyes scanning every inch of her face, her body, as if memorizing her. "You're shaking," he murmured, tilting his head slightly. "Are you afraid?" Olivia swallowed hard. No. It was the truth. She wasn't afraid. She was exhilarated. Leonard exhaled a quiet laugh, his lips curling into that familiar smirk. Liar. And then he closed the distance between them. His hands landed on either side of her head, palms flat against the wall, caging her in. He didn't kiss her immediately, didn't rush. Instead, he let the tension build, let the anticipation coil tight between them. And Olivia? She was drowning in it. When he finally leaned in, his lips grazing the shell of her ear, she sucked in a sharp breath. "You can still walk away," he murmured, his voice dripping with dangerous promise. But Olivia didn't move, because walking away was never an option. Not anymore. The space between them was razor-thin, every breath, every heartbeat synchronized in a rhythm neither of them could control. Olivia could feel the heat radiating from Leonard's body, his presence overwhelming, intoxicating. And still, he didn't touch her. Not yet. Instead, he let the silence stretch, his dark eyes searching hers, waiting for what? She didn't know. Maybe for her to break first. Maybe for her to beg. But she refused to give him the satisfaction. So she stood her ground, chin lifted, her breathing uneven but steady. "You think you're in control of this, don't you?" Leonard finally murmured, his voice a low, dangerous rasp. Olivia swallowed. "Aren't I?" His smirk deepened, wicked amusement flashing in his gaze. Not even close. And then finally he touched her. His hand slid down, slow, deliberate, tracing the curve of her waist, gripping her hips as if he was staking his claim. Olivia's breath hitched, her fingers curling into fists at her sides, her body betraying her. Because she wanted this. She wanted him. Leonard leaned in, his lips brushing just beneath her ear, his breath hot against her skin. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. But she didn't. Because she couldn't. Because she didn't want to. And so, she surrendered. Completely. The moment Olivia surrendered, everything else ceased to exist. The past. The future. The consequences. There was only now. Leonard didn't hesitate. He captured her mouth in a kiss so deep, so consuming, it stole the very breath from her lungs. His hands gripped her waist, pulling her flush against him, their bodies molding together in a way that felt dangerously natural. Olivia gasped against his lips, her fingers threading through his hair, tugging, anchoring herself to him. The rough scrape of his stubble against her skin sent a shiver down her spine, the sensation both foreign and intoxicating. He was nothing like David. David was gentle, careful, predictable. Leonard was fire, uncontrolled, unapologetic, and she was burning alive. He lifted her effortlessly, pressing her back against the wooden wall of the boathouse. The old planks creaked beneath their weight, the scent of cedar and lake water thick in the air. "Do you even realize what you're doing to me?" Leonard rasped, his lips tracing a heated path down her neck. Olivia barely heard him. Her mind was a blur, her body betraying every rational thought. She had crossed the line, and there was no going back. The world outside the boathouse had faded into nothingness. There was no David, no marriage, no past, no future. Only this. Only him. Leonard's grip on Olivia tightened, his breath warm against her collarbone as he pressed her deeper into the wall. Every fiber of her being screamed that this was wrong, that she was standing on the precipice of complete destruction. And yet, she didn't want him to stop. "You have no idea what you've started," Leonard murmured against her skin, his voice rough, edged with something dangerous. Olivia swallowed hard, her fingers digging into his shoulders. Then show me. His dark gaze locked onto hers, searching, challenging. Then, without another word, he did. Time became meaningless. Minutes. Hours. They blended together in a haze of stolen touches and whispered confessions, of heat and hunger and a madness that neither of them could resist. But when it was over, when the dust had settled and reality came crashing back in, Olivia felt it. The weight. The irreversible damage. Leonard lay beside her, one arm draped lazily over his forehead, his breathing still uneven. He looked at ease. Satisfied. She, on the other hand, felt like she was suffocating. What happens now? She whispered. Leonard turned his head, his expression unreadable. Now. He smirked. Now, we pretend none of this ever happened. The words should have relieved her. Instead, they made her stomach drop. Because she knew. She knew she could never forget. Olivia tried. She really did. She went home to David, kissed him on the cheek, smiled at the dinner table. She played the role of the devoted wife, the one who had never strayed, never sinned. But she felt Leonard everywhere. In the brush of her husband's fingers, in the scent of smoke lingering in the air, in the silence of the night, when she lay awake, haunted by what she had done. And the worst part? She wasn't the only one. One evening, as she stepped onto the back porch, she saw him, Leonard, standing in the shadows, watching her, waiting. She should have run, but she didn't, because she wanted to be caught. It was a game now, a dangerous, twisted game where every glance, every brush of fingers in passing, was a silent challenge. Come back to me. Dare me to. And Olivia did. Again and again, until the game spun out of control. Until David noticed. It started with little things. The way Olivia would tense when Leonard entered the room. The way she avoided David's gaze when he asked about her day. Then, one night, David came home earlier than expected. And found them. Together. The moment David's voice cut through the air, Olivia knew it was over. Olivia. She turned, heart hammering in her chest, dread pooling in her stomach. David stood in the doorway, his face a mixture of confusion, anger, and something worse. Betrayal. Leonard didn't move. He simply leaned back against the wall, arms crossed, watching. David's gaze flicked between them, and realization dawned. His face twisted in horror. Oh my God. David. Olivia started, but she didn't have the words. There were no words. The damage was done. David took a step back, shaking his head. I trusted you. His voice broke. I loved you. Olivia felt something inside her shatter. She reached for him, but David pulled away. Don't. And then he was gone, and Olivia was left standing in the wreckage of the life she had destroyed.